This is the PESU Monster 250W, which stands for 250 watts, which is what the motor is rated for, nominally at least. It peaks at 500 watts, and it's rated at up to 99 Newton meters. For comparison, the Bosch CX, like mountain-specific mid-drive, is rated up to 75 Newton meters. So this sounds really impressive, and it shares a lot with the Bosch design. And I'm referencing them because they're one of the leaders in the electric bike space globally. You can see that the chainring here is much smaller than a traditional chainring. It's a 40 tooth equivalent, but there are only 14 teeth on it. And I was told that it spins 2.8 revolutions for every single crank arm revolution. I've asked Bosch why they made that design choice, and they said, well, it grabs the chain really well. I sort of suspect that there are maybe other advantages in terms of efficiency for the motor, spinning at a higher RPM. With that chainring, maybe it starts and stops a little faster. This is not quite as responsive as Bosch, but you still have these nice guides. Those are aluminum alloy, so the chain's not going to come off. You have this really compact, clean design with a plastic skid plate on the front. It's got some vent holes. It's really neat. This TTIUM motor is new to me. I heard about it from the guys at Smart Motion. They use hub motors right now, but apparently they're moving more towards this mid-drive. A lot of other companies are using Bafang or Bosch, Brose, Shimano, Yamaha. It sounds like Dapu is even coming out with a mid-drive. So this is definitely a popular trend in the e-bike space, and to see a new company coming out with something that's really beautiful, that actually works pretty well, was impressive. I think the big takeaway is if you can get a bike like this that's a little bit more affordable, maybe that's okay, and you're still going to get the efficiency by leveraging your cassette, being able to switch gears to empower both your legs and the motor to climb a little bit better. For a mountain bike application like this, that could be a really good thing. So the other thing that I really liked about it is it's able to support pedal cadence up to 120 RPM. By comparison, the Bosch Active Line motors only go up to about 100, same with the Yamaha PW, but the new PWX goes up to 120. So this is, it's really checking the boxes in a lot of ways. It is measuring rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque, just like some of the fancier drive units. And it's interesting to note that instead of putting the chain over the right chainstay and then below it, that's what most bikes do. They kind of go like this. In this case, PESU has moved the rear dropout a little bit lower, and they've run the chain below the dropout for both the top and the bottom, and that's unique. I see this sometimes with like belt drives, because for a belt you have to cut the frame to get it through. You can't just unlink it the way you can with a chain. So I'm just kind of keeping that in mind. That means there's no slap guard on top of the right chainstay, but there's also none on the bottom. So this chain could potentially bounce up and get a couple little nicks, but this is an aluminum alloy frame. I don't think you'd really notice them, and I haven't heard it bouncing a whole lot. That would be the most likely in the lowest gear, that big ring, that's a 34 tooth sprocket. And when you're in a low gear, usually you aren't going fast and the chain isn't bouncing around anyway. So it's just kind of neat. Looking at this thing, we've got a Shimano Acera. This is 9 speeds, not bad, and Acera's a decent group set. Longer derailleur here. I haven't had any problems pedaling with it. I haven't had chain slip. I haven't had drops or anything like that. It's a good setup. Overall, it's bringing weight of the motor and the battery right there to the center of the bike. The battery is a little bit larger physically, and it also weighs more than some of the other batteries out there. So 36 volts, 14.5 amp hours. It's 522 watt hours. It's over half a kilowatt hour. A lot of the bigger companies these days, like Bosch, they have the PowerPack 500. So this is a little bit higher capacity than that. I don't know what cells they're using, what they're rated at in terms of like A or B or what the quality is. But they're lithium-ion, and that tends to be a relatively light, long-lasting technology. The thing is, this is actually 7 pounds, this battery, which is definitely heavier. By comparison, the Bosch PowerPack 500 is 5.7 pounds, so closer to like 6. So a whole extra pound. So maybe they're using less energy-dense cells, just a different standard to try to keep that price lower. The price on this right now on Kickstarter is $15.99, which sounds really good. But then they also have the fine print where it's like, well, if we're shipping to the United States, $99 for like VAT, which doesn't apply here, but maybe because it's coming from Europe or something, plus shipping, as I understand it. And then it's like $2.99 or maybe even $3.99, depending on if you're in Canada or the UK. So you're definitely getting, $1,600, $17, $18, $19. You start to get close to that $2,000 price point, and you really want to see some higher quality components, because companies like High Bike are now offering $2,200 bikes that have similar hardware. So, this is SR Suntour XCM 30. Right? They say like 100 millimeters of travel. It's got a slider for compression and lockout, a little bit cheaper. And this is a spring fork. It's not air. You've got preload on the other side. It does the job. 100 millimeter hub width, 9 millimeter quick release skewer right there. So just a little bit cheaper. And even the stanchions, you see how they're silver. They don't have any extra coatings or fancy bits like that. I did notice that the head tube is tapered. Gives a little bit of extra strength. I can't say whether or not this is using sealed cartridge bearings, but I did connect this to the back of my car. I've been driving across the country. It's been raining and stuff, and I'm not noticing a lot of squeaks. I'm not seeing indications of rust there, but I have seen a little bit here with a couple of the screws that hold on this display panel. So kind of keep that in mind. Other items that stand out as being high quality to me are these Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. 3-finger levers, and I love that they offer adjustable reach, so you can bring that in a little bit if you're someone with smaller hands, or maybe you're wearing gloves because it's cold out. So 180 millimeters on those rotors, that's great, both front and rear. You're going to get good stopping power. It's very smooth. I've really enjoyed those brakes. Even the grips here, these are WTB. They've got a bulge in the middle, so they're a little bit more ergonomic, and they do lock. They have lockers on both ends, so they're not going to twist on you. That's definitely a little bit nicer. WTB saddle, not the most comfortable thing, but it's more of a name brand. It's decent. 31.6 millimeters on that seat post, 350 millimeters long. I am looking at what I believe is the medium size frame. This comes in 17, 19, and 21. And I measured this seat tube here, and it was 19. So the guys at the show that I met with, they're all from China. This is like a Chinese company. PESU, and also TTIUM. I believe that's it. A lot of this electric bike hardware stuff does come from China. It's fine. I had a difficulty communicating with them. It was like they were all speaking Mandarin, I assume, and then one person would kind of translate, and I'm asking them questions, and they're like debating the answers and stuff. But they did give me some excellent literature, which was a little bit more specific, and it talked about the IP rating on water ingress for the motor, as well as the display and the battery. I think these are like IP65, and I think that's like IP54 maybe, so maybe not quite as waterproof, but still it's great that they're rating it for that. And it does use, I think, CAN bus communications. It's a little bit more advanced, and I actually really like the display, how it's laid out and everything. So on the one hand, it's like, okay, how good is support going to be? The Kickstarter campaign says, well, you get 7 days, like money back guarantee, they change your mind, I guess, if you got it and it didn't work in 7 days. And then you have 30 days for like an exchange policy. So if you thought this was okay, but you wanted to spend a little bit more for one of their nicer models, or maybe you wanted to switch from a hardtail cross-country bike like this to their step through, they have more of a city design, you could. I've tried to include a lot of that information in the write-up, like all the specs and details, the measurements for this specific model, some contact information, because I know it can be a little bit precarious when you're ordering something on crowdfunding and you hope you get it, hopefully it comes on time. These guys seem legit. That's why I'm doing this review, and also because I'm very excited about that TTIUM motor. I feel like we might see it on some other bikes, and I just want to get a feel for it, get going and mix it up a little bit. I'm always doing like some really high-end bikes, and this is a little bit more value, but they're going for that high end. And you can just tell, and some of the graphics and the makeup of this wheel set, 32-hole, 15-gauge straight spokes, black. They match the rims, double-walled. And then we've got these B-line tires, cross-country, 27.5 by 2.0. These are not plus size. They're not even kind of that 2.25 or 2.15. They're a little bit narrower, which is going to be efficient, maybe a little bit lighter because there's not as much rubber material, but they're not quite as comfortable. You have that suspension fork, but these tires are just there. It's, again, more efficient, 35 to 65 PSI rating on those. So the takeaway for me on this bike, when I first saw it, I was like, cool. I was thinking $1,500. Well, it's actually 16, maybe 1,700, depending on, whatever. And then you get it hopefully in November, and that kind of thing. Like there's some little risks here that I want to acknowledge, but ultimately I would probably use this for getting around town with a little bit of light off-road, which is why I'm on this park right now. There's a paved path, and then there's like a kind of a gravel dirt path over there. And this bike could handle both of those. The tires would do really well. I think it would be fairly comfortable. Unfortunately, you don't get a lot of utility because they didn't include rack bosses. See, there's nowhere to mount a rear rack. So you'd have to spend a little bit extra and maybe get one that can kind of Velcro onto the seat stays, or one that connects to that seat post and hangs off. Those just get bumped around more. They're not quite as solid. And sometimes I think Thule has like the pedal and pedal pack kind of a rack, and it's just not as convenient as if they'd had some bosses added. I kind of wish they would have done that. Also, because this battery pack box is a little bit bigger, and because that top tube is sloped, you just don't have room for bottle cage bosses. So bringing water along with you might require a Camelback or something. That's fine if you're on this actually riding in the mountains, but if you're getting around town and you've got some books or whatever, maybe you're a student, it's a bummer that there's nowhere to, mount a rack. And for that matter, there's nowhere to mount a kickstand either. There's no provisions right here. Usually there are a couple, it's like 18 millimeters, 2 holes you can mount a kickstand. Of course, on Amazon, they have little ones that connect, maybe not quite as securely. Those are the little things that I think about, like how would I be using this bike, and how could I extend the use of it? There are no lights built in or anything, which is fine, but there is a light button on the control pad. I like that the wires are internally routed, and I actually really like the color. It's sort of a metallic gray with orange accents, a little bit of black mixed in with that suspension fork. You got these Welgo M21 pedals. Not my favorite. These cage pedals just aren't very wide. And if you crash the bike or lean it over, this part right here, the edge can get bent in and stuff. I've seen that a lot on demo bikes. So I might replace those with like some Welgo platform pedals. Again, that's like $20 on Amazon kind of thing. I would also consider upgrading this seat post with a suspension post, whether it's from Suntour. They make their XCR suspension post. It's like $100, or you can go with Thudbuster for $150, or Body Float for like $200 plus. And that's going to smooth out the ride a lot, especially with these more efficient tires. So for me, as someone with a sensitive back and neck, those are things I think about. Also, notice that the stem here, so Uno, that's a lot of the hardware, like the handlebar, the seat post is Uno, I don't know, but aluminum alloy, looks like about a 7-degree rise, and we've got these stacks and stuff, but look how it's kind of down right now. So it's flipped. You could take this off, turn it over, and then instead of going down, it would go up a little bit, and that would make it more comfortable, because the reach on this one, even for me, it's a little far. I feel like I'm leaning forward, and that's more aggressive, it's more aerodynamic, and it's fine, but as someone with more of a casual around town approach, I would probably flip that up. In fact, one of the guys at the booth at Interbike, he was like asking me, he's like, do you think the frame is too long? And I was like, I don't think so. I was measuring the, reach and everything, and it's like, and it doesn't seem like too long, but when you ride it with the stem flipped, it does feel a bit long. So I think he just didn't know, like, you got to flip that stem back up. They probably, in fact, I know they were disassembling the bikes and rebuilding them just for the show, because they'd shipped them all the way from China, or at least from California when they arrived from China. So the point being, if you get this bike and the stem is flipped like that, you might need to angle it up. And I don't know what this is going to look like when you receive it if you do the crowdfunding thing. You're probably going to have to mount that front wheel, maybe turn the handlebars sideways. Everything else, the seat post, there's a quick release collar right here. You can probably take that off and put it on pretty easily. Coming back to the wheels, pretty standard setup in the front, 100 millimeter width. In the back, it's like 135, which is weird because I'm used to seeing 142, a little wider. And it has a 12 millimeter skewer, right? So it's extra burly. It's like that's like a big upgrade in the back, but and maybe in some ways that empowers the motor, because you do have all that extra torque and force being applied to the drivetrain, so you want that rear wheel to be really, really solid. And that's nice. I'm not going to complain about that. It's quick release. It just surprised me. I was like, well, why don't they have a through axle up front too? Because you want steering and everything, make it a little bit more stiff. Some of the other upgrades, when you spend more on an electric bike, sometimes you get the through axles and then boost, where it's like a wider hub and a better bracing angle on the spokes, a little bit tougher. This seems to be fine for what it is, for the price point. Like, I'm definitely digging it. And I feel like it looks cool. I've gotten that feedback from a few people. It's like, well, that's a cool looking bike, and the battery looks nice and everything. It is locked to the frame right now. And before I take that off and show you, I want to point out that, with the charger, you plug in right here. You can charge it on or off the bike. There's also a USB port. So this is a Type A, 5 volt, 1 amp, and you could plug into this. I'm not sure if I would plug in while riding, because look how close that crank arm comes to both the charging port and USB. If you had something like wired up to that, or maybe like a rear light, I would definitely recommend getting a right angle adapter. Like off Amazon, they have this thing that just immediately turns right, and you could, kind of cable tie the wires to your frame, just to be careful. I'd probably use that more if the battery's off the bike, like using this as backup power source to charge your phone if the lights go out or something like that. The battery does have an on-off button all of its own, and it has this nice little LED power level indicator built right in. In some ways that's inconvenient, because when you want to ride the bike you have to turn it on and then you turn it on again up there. But in other ways, you can turn the battery on to use it as that backup power source. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't want to complain too much. It's not that inconvenient. You could totally reach down even if you're sitting and access that. And then there's that second USB port at the base of the display panel. Here, I'll swivel this up a little bit. See, there we go, USB port number 2, and this one's really conveniently located. So if you're someone who wants to use your phone for GPS, or maybe a light or a music player, you can tap into that pretty awesome battery, which is great. Like those are some of the little things that some of the big brands don't always have. Bosch, for example, they have their Intuvia display, and it has a micro USB port. But if you get the Purion, it's the tiny little display that is only over here. It doesn't have that. Which is, to me, it's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. You can see that they've got the connection point. This is not threaded, and it doesn't have like a waterproof washer. These seem to work all right, but again, this would be kind of metal, and it would be a little bit tougher if it had been designed that way. So here's the key. Comes with a couple. I'm just gonna insert that right here, turn, there we go, and then slide. Look at that. So this, I like these slide batteries, where it just comes out the side. It means that they can have that top tube a little bit lower for the lower standover height and make it more approachable. 7 pounds, as I was saying before. There's the bottom of it, 36 volt, 14.5 amp hours. And then there's that little lip for carrying it around. I really appreciate that. There are some batteries that don't have this, and you kind of struggle. You don't want to drop your battery. This is one of the more expensive parts of the bike. This one does have a little bit of it feels pretty solid, but there's a bit of a rattle inside, and that may be because it's been traveling all over the world and maybe even dropped a little bit at the demo event at Interbike. And then you click it in. There we go. You can hear it click. Feels solid, but there is a little bit of a rattle here, a little bit of play. Hear that? And again, that may be because it's been used as a demo bike. So now we're getting to the good stuff. Let's power it on again. See the lights come on. The display is ready, and you just have to hold that power button for a couple seconds. There, see, it says TTIUM. It's color. It offers adjustable angle, swivel. It's not removable, so this could take some wear. It's getting sprinkles on it right now, but just sun, and maybe it gets scratched if it's at a bike rack, which is a bummer because it's so beautiful. I love that it shows battery percentage up at the top, not just like 4 or 5 bars or whatever. You got time right there, speed, it's in miles per hour, trip distance, and then assist level. And as we press plus or minus, it goes up or down. So we go from 0, which is pedaling like a bike, to 1, 2, 3, or 4. So 4 is the highest. That's going to give you the top speed. In my experience, the assist levels offer similar feeling of like torque and power. It's more like you're telling it how fast you ultimately want to go. And I've been able to get this up to like 18 miles per hour before the motor cuts out, which is a bit interesting because the Kickstarter campaign says like 13 miles per hour for this specific model. They do have several models, but again, this is the 250W. So that's interesting. Most electric bikes in the United States go up to like 20 miles per hour. So I was curious about that. As I was pushing buttons, I noticed that you want to push kind of in the middle. You can't push at the top. It sort of, I think it kind of pivots down like that. Also, these are a little bit vulnerable. Like I was riding and my sleeve kind of caught on it, and it feels like the button could, yeah, see that? Oh, you don't want to rip these up. That concerns me a lot. I've seen on some other Bafang displays where that actually happened, and the button pad kind of got ripped up, and it's just such a bummer because this works really nice. It's easy to reach. The other buttons here are light, so look at the backlighting, and then it goes dim. So that's cool. And then I would imagine that if this had integrated lights, those would turn on or off using that switch as well. And if I press the I button, it actually completely changes the readout display. So watch it. Look at that. It goes to like a really advanced display where it says how many kilocalories, what your RPM is, got your speed still, of course, personal best, distance, ride time. There's a lot more information. And then one more time, here's another one. It's like it's even more detailed, you know, trip time, max speed, average speed, calories burned. I just think that's kind of neat for a bike that's a little bit cheaper, or at least my perception was like, okay, there's this new motor, it's trying to be competitive on price. It's actually, this is a pretty nice display. So the other thing you can do is hold the I button for a couple seconds, and now we get into all these setting kind of things. So let's see, if I arrow up, I can go to system info. It says 27.5 inch wheels, speed limit 27, and then firmware FW version 0506. The thing is, I can't actually go through and change any of this. It's like factory set. So even though it says the speed limit's 27 miles per hour, the motor cuts out at around 18. Keep that in mind. I'm gonna go back, set up, set the date and time, set the unit. So of course that would be like kilometers per hour or miles per hour. Okay. Set brightness, auto power off. That's kind of cool. 10 minutes. I mean, I just think this is so cool. You don't get this kind of, I don't know, most displays have some settings, but I like how this is laid out. And then clear data. So I don't want to do that. I haven't cleared the data at all, and it says trip distance 45.5 miles. So I'm guessing that maybe that's like, oh, there we go, total distance 45 miles. So yeah, no one's ever reset the trip distance, and the total distance is like an odometer. It never gets reset. So this bike's been 45 miles before I even got it, and it's holding up pretty well. It's doing some good stuff. So that's it. I'm gonna go back to this big display, because for me it's a little bit, I'm you know, you're way up here. It's nice to be able to see the big numbers and get a good idea. So let's take it out. I'm just gonna walk it forward and get us onto the trail. Okay, so I'm in assist level 0. I'm just gonna pedal along without any power. Note that because of that, you know, chainring spinning, there's like a gearbox inside of here. It's not going to be quite as efficient as some of the other systems that have a more traditional sized chainring, because you know, it's converting your pedal strokes into multiple rotations. This is a complaint I hear from people who are like being critical of the Bosch system. They're like, yeah, you know, that chainring feels like a parachute, you know, you get above 20 miles per hour and it's holding you back. And I think that's an exaggeration. I haven't really noticed it that much, but it does add some inefficiency. So I want to be you know, fair here and say that this system does the same thing. So again, that's what it sounds like with no power. I maybe have to work a little bit harder to get that gearbox turning in there. And you know, I'm coasting here just fine. I was just coasting at 18 miles per hour. It's really efficient, especially if you lock out that suspension fork. Now I'm gonna go to assist level 1. Okay, this is the lowest level. You can see it spin down, right? Like it doesn't quit immediately when I stop pedaling. There's a little bit of a delay, but not bad. And I think this motor is actually very quiet. Yeah, I'm very impressed with that. I'm gonna pedal again here. I mean, this is of level 1, and I'm up to like 14, you know, ish miles per hour. I'd probably need to switch gears to go faster, but the motor's still going, and that's that RPM I was talking about. It goes up to 120. It just doesn't, the thing is, it just doesn't feel like that much different when I switch from 1 to 4. Let's watch. Here we are, back up to that like 14. It doesn't sound that much louder to me, maybe a little bit faster. So I guess what I'm saying is there are 4 levels of assist, and I just haven't noticed that there's a huge difference between each level. Still works well, still quiet. I'm gonna go ahead and shift gears, but note that when you shift on this bike, it does not appear to have shift sensing. I've tested this and kind of banged the gears through. Like most bikes, it's relying primarily on a torque sensor. So yeah, it knows that we're moving, it knows I'm pedaling for kind of a safety on-off, but it's really relying on torque. And I like that it's smooth. By comparison, the new Shimano motor, the E8000, it really feels like there's kind of a like kunk, like kind of a start feeling, whereas this is really smooth. Yeah, so anyway, I like that. I'm gonna switch through some of the gears real quick here. A little bit rough. You know, that's me plus up to 99 Newton meters of torque being applied directly to the chain, the derailleur, the sprockets. So I would recommend easing off a little bit, just as you would with a traditional bicycle. When you're shifting, just have enough speed that you can coast for a second and kind of keep those pedals moving, but don't push. And that's gonna result in much smoother shifting. There we go. It's an example of smoother shifting right there. I'm gonna try to hit that top assisted speed. See what that's like. There we go. I can't hear or feel the motor anymore at all, but I can easily pedal beyond that just with my own power. And this is one-handed. So people who say, you know, oh, it's slowing you down or something. No, it's not. The motor freewheels just fine. It might just add a little bit of extra, I don't know, resistance when you're actually turning that chain ring. And it tracks nicely. It feels solid and secure. Overall, I like it. I think this is cool, and I welcome a new company into the US. These guys are entrepreneurs, you know, trying to take advantage of this new market, kind of the price point, and bring over that technology. I'm excited to see this on bikes from Smart Motion in the future. And I also wanted to do kind of a climb test, and there's a hill up here. So let's do that before we close. I'll show you the climbing. Okay, I've used this hill for tests in the past. I'm gonna shift down like gear 4. I'm in assist level 4. Come to almost a complete stop here. And pedal. Doing pretty well. Not a problem. You know, it could have started helping a little bit faster, but I'm also not in the lowest gear. So that was a kind of a stress test. Again, I'm really impressed with how quiet this is. The motor is definitely one of the smoother and quieter options. Maybe not as quick and responsive as like Yamaha PWX or the Bosch Performance Line, like the Performance Line CX. Let's do that again in the first gear. Okay, this is the gear you'd want to be in if you were really climbing, and I'm gonna try to go up this. Not bad. I'm actually very impressed. And again, how quiet it is. Just went right up. This is kind of muddy, it's wet, and fairly steep. Like this is definitely a climb. I'll try to go up this. Make it even more challenging. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, good stuff. Got grass flying all over the place now. Okay, so I'm in pedal assist level 4. It's the highest. I'm gonna try to show you how quickly that chainring will start and stop based on my pedaling torque. I'm also gonna shift gears. You might notice it banging a little bit. Yeah, I'm trying to hit that top speed. It feels like you know, you do need to shift gears in order to, you definitely feel a boost in speed and kind of power. So it's almost like a manual transmission car in a way. Even though the RPM on this can go to 120, it feels like there's definitely more power at the lower, sort of slower RPMs. Do a time test again. Very capable. Almost felt like I was lifting the front wheel a little bit, doing some wheelie action. It's interesting, I've been riding around quite a bit today, and it never feels like I get above the 6th gear. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right in there, right? And it's just, I can't pedal much faster than 23 miles per hour. So even though this is a 9-speed cassette with a nice derailleur, it should hold up a little bit better and be tighter. You know, and there's multi-shift. You can go down to the easy gears with like just one long trigger press. I just feel like those higher gears, the highest 2 or 3, are kind of wasted, and maybe it's because of the chainring size at the front, just that limited top speed of about 18 miles per hour assisted. I don't know, just kind of a side comment there. Above 18 miles per hour, where the motor kind of shuts off. There's our top assisted speed again. Well guys, I think that's it. That's the PESU Monster 250W. It seems like they've already successfully met their Kickstarter campaign goals. They've got several different models. I'm excited about what this company might offer in the future. Hopefully they're able to grow a little bit and extend that warranty. Again, when you don't buy a bike from the shop, you have to do some extra work putting it together yourself, dealing with maintenance or replacement parts. I don't really know what the deal will be, even though some of them are modular. As far as an online electric bike goes, though, I feel like this is pretty advanced, and it has some nice features between the drivetrain, hydraulic disc brakes, and everything. Oh, look at that. Yep. So anyway, for the full write-up on this, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there and ride safe.